Hi, we're back, and we're going to go ahead and finish the last step of our first class. And so if you'll remember that we had worked with our azaleas, and we'd worked with our color, and we'd kind of put a cluster together of those different azaleas, and we changed their color by using the hue and saturation. So now what we're going to do is a little different technique to kind of lay in another pattern over our background, because that background is a really nice watercolor. It looks like some swimming pool water or some water there that's a nice color. But I want to change it a little bit. I want to play with it a little bit. So we can do a couple of different things. What I want to do is I'm going to click down on that layer. So I'm on the water layer there. And I'm going to add another layer. And you'll notice that the little button that allows us to add is right there on this bottom of our layer palette. So now I've added a new layer. I'm going to get rid of my history there so we're focused there. I've added a new layer. Actually, I've got a couple of new layers there. And quit clicking there, and it's giving me some different things. There we go. And I'm on layer 2. That's the one that I've added, the first layer. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and I'm going to select all. Because what I want to do is I want to lay a color in over that layer. And I need to select a color, so I'm going to click on my color palette. And I'd like to select kind of a gold or a yellow. That yellow, so I picked a little bit of the yellow from one of these flowers. And I'm going to make it a little bit brighter. I'm going to move it a little bit here in the color palette. And then when I say OK, I notice that now I've got my, my foreground is all selected with my gold color. So now I'm ready to do my fill. So I'm going to go up to Edit. I'm going to come down to Fill. And instead of Pattern right now, we're going to go ahead and use the foreground color because that's what we have just selected. And basically, so now that I've got my foreground selected, I've selected foreground, I say OK. And it lays in the yellow. Now the problem with that is it is so bright that it's taken away. I can't see the background. So what I'm going to have to do is drop in. I'm going to have to use my opacity there a little bit, my little gauge, and I'm going to drop this back so that it still gives me the gold. It almost looks like it's a little bit of a gold satin look. And I like that. I like that better. So then I'm going to go up to my next layer there, and you notice that I have another third layer. If you don't have that layer in, you might want to go ahead and put another one in above the yellow layer. And I'm going to do another fill, and this time I'm going to add some texture. So I think that in class what we did, we went to Fill, and I went into the textured layer. We filled with a pattern. And that's where you're going to find all your textures and your different different effects. You'll notice that it has custom pattern. And so here's where you'll select what type of custom pattern. Now if you're just getting started, you may not have all these loaded. Photoshop has a lot of preset patterns already. You may only see 1, 2, or 3 here basically. And so what you want to do is go ahead and remember, whenever you see a triangle, okay, that always means there's more choices there. So under Pattern, when we drop this down, if you don't see anything loaded there, you might want to click on the arrow that points to the right. That basically is going to give you your pattern. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and pick one of your patterns. You're going to load patterns. And let's say, for instance, you want to try your artistic surfaces. You would click on it. And instead of replacing the patterns that are there, you probably just want to append them because you want to keep that list together so that you can use them at other times. Right now I've already got them loaded, so I'm just going to say cancel. And I'm going to pick the gauze. I'm going to pick that gauze pattern. And what that does is it's going to give me a grayscale. And it's going to cover that. And then I can use opacity to fade it back again. So I'm going to say OK. And sure enough, there's my background there. And so I'm going to go up to, I make sure that I have my layer 3 selected, and I go up to the opacity and drop that down and move my little scale back. And I'm going to take it probably down to 25 or 30 because I want that gold in the background to kind of show up. So I've now actually given myself a completely different background look from that blue water that was there before, just by playing with some other fills and some textures. So if we look now, we're pretty close to finishing this up, and we want to add one more layer because I want to put a frame around the whole picture. So if I click on another layer, it adds layer 4 there for me, and I'm going to make sure I clicked into layer 4, and this time I want to put a frame around my picture. I want to pick one of the greens or maybe one of the darker greens. So I'm going to click on my foreground color again, a little color palette here. I'm going to come out into my picture, and I'm going to pick, that gives me kind of a brown frame. That's kind of nice. That may have a nice effect on the whole picture. So I'll go ahead and say OK. At this point, you can kind of play around with that a little bit and play with the colors yourself. This is that's what Photoshop's all about. It's about giving you the creative control of your composition. So now that I have picked my foreground color, I still have my marching ants, okay, around the layer that's empty. And so this time I'm going to go up to Edit, and instead of filling it, I'm going to stroke it. And it's going to ask me what the width is. I'm going to try 30 here. And then the location of the stroke is going to be on the inside because I want it to show up on the inside of the picture. And then I'm going to say OK. And it gives me a little frame around my picture, which is kind of where I was going with these. So what I want to do now is I want to say, gee, that picture looks pretty good, but I kind of like to be able to give it a little dimension. So I'm going to come down to my FX area here, click on it, and I'm going to add a drop shadow. And when I add the drop shadow, it brings up my layer style menu. And you'll notice that all of those choices that were on this FX area, this little button here, are really listed along the side here. And so it gives me a default value, and usually it's around 5 points for distance. If you want to adjust these different areas, let's say we end up with we want to put a bevel and emboss on there too, you'll notice that this menu changes depending on which word you've clicked on there on the left-hand side. And so if I want to make this a little bigger with the drop shadow, there we go, make the size a little bigger, the distance can be a little bigger, and it pushes the frame away a little bit for you. So that's kind of a nice effect. Notice that I did click on Bevel and Emboss, and it gives me kind of a rounded piece, almost like a molded edge of a frame. And so that's kind of a nice feature also. And the same goes here. As long as I click on that word, I can work with the rounding by the size of it and the depth of the a little bit of the molding or the rounding or the beveling. And so that gives me a nice effect for my frame. Now I'm going to go ahead and let's turn on these other layers that we had turned off. Remember, we had our pansies. And then remember, we also had our Easter lily up there. Well, that Easter lily looks kind of nice. I'm done now with my marching ants. So what I want to do is go up to Select and Deselect. So now that deselects any of my effects on any of the layers that I'm working with. But notice if I go up to my Easter lily, I want to kind of move that around a little bit. And it's kind of at a weird angle here, isn't it? It's outside the frame. Actually, these other flowers, believe it or not, are outside the frame too, because they're on top of the frame layer. So what I might want to do is have this Easter lily, I'll leave it right there, and I might want to take this frame and move it. So I clicked the layer 4 that had the frame on it, and I'm going to move it up over the Easter lily. And now the frame is over everything. So if I want, whoops-a-daisy, I'm bringing the frame with me, aren't I? And then if I click on the Easter lily, I can move it up a little bit. Okay. Now it looks like my pansies need to be moved, doesn't it? There we go. We can move these pansies around a little bit. And then I think we've about got everything. Remember what we did with the flowers. If we needed them tilted a little bit, I clicked on the layer that I wanted to move, and I went up to Edit, free transform. And I move them a little bit. And so then we can close and apply. And I think I also have at the top up here, I have text. Now I'm not real sure why we picked vacation as the word there. But I think I would rather say, I would rather maybe call this. So if I click on the word vacation and then click into it, I'm going to change it and call it flower power. And then to disengage my text tool, once I've made the text, notice that I clicked on it and you see I've got a insertion point there. That's how I can change that. The effects to the text stayed the same, so I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to go ahead and disengage that text tool by moving and picking another tool, and then I can come up and I can move my flower power around. And so this one up here has the person's name, in this case Sharon, and so you can put your name down there by changing the text the same way we had before. So now we have completed this exercise. And so stay tuned for another class. Have a good day. Bye now.